Jay's brother, I don't even like Mike. Brother, what's your pride like? Can you really fight right? Pour the holy water in the barrel, we don't like Sprite. Say you feeling tight, right? Get off on the bike. I ain't going downhill, brother, you should take a hike. Man, I'm living Christ-like. You ain't living Christ-like. You need to do something about it, get your life right. Aight?
80 devastating thought, Christ-like, who live in Christ-like? Everyone think Christ-white, all just want that Christ-like. Not to live no Christ-life, we just want a tight wife, and maybe a nice whip. Don't forget that big grip, we just want that really shit, like that super curvy chick. We don't think about his word, trying to keep it in the heart. We don't love him from the start, Bible make us want apart. Word shitty to our ears, we don't teach it to our peers. I stretch my hands to you, and that's what we do in this land of captivity. Eat up everything they say, mouth full of cavities. That's why every day we crying over tragedies, happenings to the blacks, killing our community. Christ-like, who live in Christ-like? I just bought Nikes, brother, I don't even like Mike. But that was the man that everyone saw. Now the man that you see, he loves to keep the laws. 613, 10 commandments. In case you're confused, we the Hebrews. Stretch my hands. Some of that.
Christ-like, says you live in Christ-like. I just bought Jay's brother, I don't even like Mike. Brother, what's your pride like? Can you really fight right? Pour the holy water in the barrel, we don't like Sprite. Get off on the...
Shalom, shalom. Babakar Tawab, and for those who speak modern day, or modern Hebrew, Boker Tov. This is the modern day prophet, Nabi Al-Hayim, Kodesh Echad Yasharal Malak Brayana ben Yochanan. And today we're going to go over, we're going to have a quick little recap of the little smoke session that I had with Sicarii and Deacon. There were actually two sessions. The first one is the one I'm going to show first, naturally. It lasted maybe about 10 minutes, simply because I couldn't quickly memorize and recall certain scriptures, which, interestingly enough, that these devils, instead of being men of honor, they don't allow a person to be able to provide and present all factual evidence for them. Furthermore, as soon as they know that you're providing information that goes against their understanding and their ideology, they either, one, mute you, two, cut you off, three, they will, and this is what they do mostly, they will begin to laugh and make jokes, simply because your recollection knowledge isn't as keen as theirs. Doesn't mean that you have less knowledge or less understanding or less wisdom. It just means that your brain is less robotic than theirs to just access files at will and at random. But in any case, their activity, their action and activity in reference to claiming to educate and edify people is, in essence, evil. Absolutely and completely. And you will be able to begin to see that for yourself in these videos during this live session. So let's go ahead and start it out.
All right. We got it stacked. All right, finally, let's see. All right, mic check, mic check. You finally ready, brother?
No spaghetti. Yes, I am.
You got your spaghetti ready?
Hey, I'm about to put it together, family.
What you putting in that spaghetti?
Very lean beef.
Ground beef?
Very lean beef.
This with the beef. You better get some ground turkey for our health, brother. But okay, so you said the New Testament is deceptive because of John chapter 10. What is John chapter 10 is deceptive?
Well, there's much deceptive about John chapter 10, but as a matter of fact, man, Hasad helped me out so much greater. We're gonna go ahead and use a scripture that Hasad had read to a brother earlier when he was talking about
he's doing his homework.
When we was talking about divorce and whatnot. So Hasad, if you wouldn't mind, brother, can you go ahead and run that?
Verse 30 something, right?
Right. Well, that's in the New Testament, but you read the Old Testament scripture in reference to the bill of divorce. So let's run back to that first.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Matthew 24:1. When a man had taken a wife. Deuteronomy. You said
no, Deuteronomy.
Oh, I said Matthew? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry. Deuteronomy. When a man had taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he has found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand and send her out of his house.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and read the next verse.
And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife.
That's the key verse right there. Mm-hmm. She may go be another man's wife. Mm-hmm. Now, according to the so-called Messiah, that makes her an adulteress.
This dude, man, you don't.
Okay, so as you see, Hasad had already shook his head no. Deacon is about to say that I don't understand or know the scriptures.
Understand? See,
no. There is complete understanding there. Allow me to help validate my point.
Okay,
because when you go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 25 verse 26, it clearly says that if your woman will not listen to you and accept your headship, then cut her straight off. Cut her straight off. Kick her right out. Boom. Get out. Go. I don't need to see you no more. You don't want to listen to me? I can't be your head. I can't be your husband. But according to the Messiah, that's making her an adulteress.
No.
Now, you already heard Hasad say no. But they never pulled up the scripture, nor did they ever allow me to pull up the scripture, even though I knew the scripture by heart, and I recited it to them. So let's find out how incorrect I actually was. All right, so here's the scripture from Matthew. You have heard that it was said by them of old time. It was actually said by Moses specifically. That's a first area of deception that this devil places. But anyway, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her in his heart. This actually is the wrong scripture, but I'm glad I pulled it up first. The only reason why I'm glad is because the thing is that to court a woman, you do have to acknowledge if you're attracted to her physically. All right? So this even itself goes against the law of the Israelite. If you're attracted to a woman physically, then you have to court that woman. And then if you are courting that woman, you're definitely going to look at her at times with lustful thoughts and desires because you're expecting to make her your wife. All right? But according to the Messiah, you've already committed adultery with her. Well, how can you do that if she's not married? If she's no one's wife, if she's not already obtained a husband, how can you commit adultery with this woman? Even by thinking about her, that's already off. But then we get down here to divorce, and this is the actual scripture that I needed to pull up. So 5:31, Matthew 5:31, it says, it has been said, whoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you that whoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causes her to commit adultery. And whoever shall marry her that is divorced commits adultery. Did you get that? Let me read that again for you. Verse 32. But I say unto you that whoever shall put away his wife, except for the cause of fornication, or because she's cheated on you or committed adultery, causes her to commit adultery. So the Messiah plainly right here is saying that if you cut your wife off and she didn't commit adultery, then you're going to cause her to commit adultery. How are you going to cause her to commit adultery? This is how. And whoever shall marry her that is divorced commits adultery. But didn't he just read a verse out of Deuteronomy that says that she is allowed to marry another man?
And give it in her hand and send her out of his house.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and read the next verse.
And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife.
Go ahead and read the next verse.
And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife.
Go ahead and read the next verse.
And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife.
That's the key.
Now, as you see, he said clearly that in the law, if he divorces her, that she can go and be another man's wife. But here in the gospel, which is the Roman good news of military victory over their enemies, it says, whoever shall marry her that is divorced commits adultery. So that's against the law. That doesn't even make sense. The law clearly says that after you give her a bill of divorce and you send her out of your house, then she's able to be another man's wife.
And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife.
So the fear of the Most High is knowledge and understanding, okay? And it's the knowledge and understanding of the laws of the Most High of Israel. So that's why it is the glory of the Most High to conceal a matter, but it is the glory of a king to search it out. And kings, that's what we're doing right now. We're searching out a matter. So I clearly told him that the Messiah went against the law. If you can't tell, that's exactly what he did, because he clearly read from the law that said that you have to give her a bill of divorce and then put her out your house. And then once she's out of your house, she is able to go marry another man. But the Messiah says that if she does, then she commits adultery. And if you've divorced her and kicked her out of your house when she hasn't committed adultery, then you're going to make her commit adultery by getting married to a new man. That's not law-based in any regard whatsoever.
The so-called Messiah, that makes her an adulteress.
This dude, man, you don't understand. See,
No. There is complete understanding there. Allow me to help validate my point.
Okay,
because when you go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 25 verse 26, it clearly says that.
Now watch what he says about Ecclesiasticus 25:26. This itself is blasphemy. Because the funny thing is, once you notice what he says, the funny thing is that he himself, which he's used in many of his raps, because I pretty much listened to him, pretty heavily, or at least I used to a couple of months ago. I stopped listening to them when they had Passover at a damn strip club. That was the end of it for me, pretty much. But anyway, one of the scriptures that they use out of Sirach constantly is Sirach 12:10. Never trust thine enemies. Never trust thine enemies. Never trust thine enemies. And they utilize that as a law of the Most High from the Old Testament. But watch what he tells me here.
I said Matthew? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I went back a little too far.
Okay,
because when you go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 25 verse 26, it clearly says that if your woman will not listen to you and accept your headship, they cut her straight off, right out, boom, get out, gone. I don't need to see you no more. You don't want.
Okay, let's go ahead and validate that scripture real quick. All right, walk with me here. As you see, I'm using the Bible Hub app. So we're going to go to the Apocrypha. We're going to go to the King James Version. And unfortunately, with the way that this is, oh, wow, I don't know what that was. There we go. Unfortunately, with the way that this is, we literally have to scroll all the way to that chapter and verse. So give me a moment and I will get us there quickly. All right, here we are at Sirach 25. We're going to scroll all the way to verse 26. Verse 26 says, if she go not as thou wouldest have her, cut her off from thy flesh and give her a bill of divorce and let her go. Let her go. Give her a bill of divorce and let her go. Now, Sicarii said I was wrong about that.
Because when you go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 25 verse 26, it clearly says that if your woman will not listen to you and accept your headship, then cut her straight off. Cut her straight off. Kick her right out. Boom. Get out. Gone. I don't need to see you no more. You don't want to listen to me? I can't be your head. I can't be your husband. But according to the Messiah, that's making her an adulteress.
No.
He clearly says that. Let's go ahead and read that scripture.
It's not. Before we start,
let's go ahead and read that scripture, brother.
Before we start playing soccer with his head, let me just say something. Hey, brother. So,
yes.
According to the law of God, which is the Mosaic law,
that's
what
correct.
is the only reason?
Notice this trickery he's about to play here, because he disregarded the scripture out of Sirach, and now he's about to try to emphasize the law. Watch.
This dude, man, you don't understand. See,
no. There is complete understanding there. Allow me to help validate my point.
Okay,
because when you go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 25 verse 26, it clearly says that if your woman will not listen to you and accept your headship, then cut her straight off. Cut her straight off. Kick her right out. Boom. Get out. Gone. I don't need to see you no more. You don't want to listen to me? I can't be your head. I can't be your husband. But according to the Messiah, that's making her an adulteress.
No.
He clearly says that. Let's go ahead and read that scripture.
It's not. Before we start.
You notice they didn't want to go back and read that scripture again, because that's exactly what the Messiah said, and they know that. But again, like I was saying, look how he twists this.
Go ahead and read that scripture, brother.
Before we start playing soccer with his head, let me just say something. Hey, brother. So,
yes.
According to the law of God, which is the Mosaic law,
that's
what
correct.
is the only reason you can divorce?
Exactly. Is there an only reason you get divorced?
Yes.
That actually is a very, very good question. Is there an only reason you can divorce? We're about to find out very soon. Let them finish real quick.
So what is the only reason you can divorce that we see in the laws of God, which is the Mosaic law?
When she herself has committed adultery.
Okay, so...
Now, I will clearly and fully and firmly admit this was my extent of intelligence or my my extent of ignorance or my lack of intelligence. All right, because there were scriptures I were knowledgeable about, but I just was not completely sure of where they were. All right, and here is where you will find that they use that lack of recollection as a means of a joke, or as a means of trying to clown another Israelite's knowledge and understanding. Now, I've already busted their head with straight scripture. There's a scripture out of Deuteronomy that says, get rid of her. Now, the thing is that what they're focusing on is when he said, any uncleanness. You see that? Any uncleanness is what they're actually trying to focus on. Sorry about that. I have to cut that out the video.
He has found some uncleanness in her, then find no favor in his eyes, because he has found some uncleanness because he has found some uncleanness in her, because he has found some uncleanness in her. Exactly.
Is there an only reason you get divorced?
Yes. What is the only reason you can divorce that we see in the laws of God, which is the Mosaic law?
When she herself has committed adultery.
Okay.
Now, I was actually wrong about that, because that's not the only reason. Let's find out from the scriptures. Now let's go ahead and look at the law and see what the law says. I went to Deuteronomy first, but that's the wrong place. We're going to go to Numbers first. We're going to look at Numbers chapter 20, verse 10. Numbers chapter 20, verse 10. Let's move that back up. And it reads, and Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? We're going to go to Leviticus 20, chapter 20, and verse 10. Punishments for sexual immorality. And listen, pay close attention to this, okay? Because this completely crushes everything that they were trying to argue about against me when I presented them factual information straight from the scriptures. So listen. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committed adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall be put to death. Now that's very important there, okay? Because how is a woman who was caught in the act of adultery, unless you're paying attention to the New Testament, we'll get to that later. How is a woman who is caught in the act of adultery, who's been stoned to death, able to even remarry? Good question, isn't it? Well, let's find out a little bit more information from Leviticus. Let's go to chapter 22, verse 13. What does verse 13 tell us? Chapter 22, verse 13 tells us, but if a priest's daughter be a widow, or divorced, or have no child, and is returned to her father's house, as in her youth, she shall eat of her father's meat, but there shall no stranger eat thereof. This is talking about sacrificial laws and sacrificial eating and what the Levites are given to them. But anyway, this is the key thing. Look. Oops, wrong word. Again, wrong word. It clearly says divorced. So if the woman is divorced, but she didn't get caught in adultery, well, obviously there's other reasons for divorcement, even according to the law, that may not be clearly, specifically specified or stated. But obviously adultery is not the only reason for divorce. You can find an unlikeness in your wife. It doesn't necessarily have to be an uncleanness. You can find an unlikeness in your wife and divorce her. An unlikeness like what? Like she doesn't want to follow your rules or allow you to be head. So according to Sirach 25:26, then you can get rid of her. But let's go ahead and see a little bit more before we go back to Sirach and back to the video to validate that these brothers are misusing scripture, they're misinterpreting Torah, and they're absolutely using their platform and their recollection knowledge simply to debase Israelites who have a serious claim or a serious cause for debate against their understanding. We're going to go to Numbers chapter 30. And we're going to go to verse 9. What does Numbers 30 and 9 say to us? But every vow of a widow or of her that is divorced. You see that? And of her that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their souls, shall stand against her. The vows, in other words, will stand against her. But that's not the key thing. It says divorced. Right? It says divorced. But what was that law, again, about being stoned? What was that? I think that was Numbers here. Is that 20 and 10? No, that was Leviticus. My apologies. Leviticus. (20 and 10). Punishments for sexual immorality. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, that adulterer and the adulteress shall be put to death. So can somebody please explain to me how, if adultery is the only reason in the law that allows a man to divorce his wife, then how can a dead adulterous woman go back to her father's house? How can that happen? How can a dead adulterous woman go back to her father's house? Leviticus 22:13. But if the priest's daughter be a widow or divorced and have no children and is returned to her father's house. You see that? You see that? So it is a law. It is a law that you can divorce a woman without her committing adultery. Where do we get that law? Where do we get that understanding? We get that understanding from right here, Sirach 25 and 26, where if she will not go as you would have her, then cut her off from your flesh. If she will not go as you have her, cut her off from your flesh. Give her a bill of divorce and let her go. She didn't commit adultery in this sense, but then again she did. What was her adultery in this sense? That she is being adulterous in reference to headship. Headship. She's not allowing the man to be the head. Now, how can we validate that? Well, we just have to go to the very next chapter, Sirach 26, and then look at verse 25. What does 25 say? A shameless woman shall be counted as a dog. Look at that. Shall be counted as a dog. A shameless woman. In other words, a headstrong woman. A woman who ain't got no tact about herself. Who ain't got no modesty, no humility. She's shameless. She's bashful. She's boastful. Like it says much times about foolishness in the book of Proverbs. This is a shameless woman. So if you have a shameless woman, who will not go as you have her, cut her off from your flesh and give her a bill of divorce and let her go. But what does Sicarii say?
Now you're talking about Sirach. So is Sirach echoing the Torah, or is the Torah being given by Moses through the mouth of God?
Sirach is echoing the Torah.
Okay.
So yes, Sirach is echoing the Torah, just like Proverbs, just like the Psalms of David, just like Ecclesiastes. If Ecclesiastes references the Torah, then Ecclesiasticus would also reference the Torah. Plain and simple. Now there is another book. It's called the Second Book of Adam and Eve. That there is a literal account where Ishmael ended up getting a wife. And he brought his wife to his father's house. And the bitch was just plain simple rude. Just rude, unruly, nasty. And I don't mean nasty like in a hygienic way. I mean nasty in a way of mannerism. And in a way of portraying oneself. So as soon as Abraham found out about this wife, naturally she was a Canaanite. As soon as Abraham found out about this wife, he went straight to his son and said, yo, get rid of that bitch. Plain and simple. He said, yo, get rid of that bitch. My apologies. My recollection about that was incorrect. That's something that Sicarii would have laughed at me about. But the correct scripture comes out of Yashar 21. Okay? So, read along with me here. And Ishmael dwelt in the deserts and in tents, traveling and resting for a long time, and he did not see the face of his father. And in the same time after, Abraham said to Sarah his wife, I will go and see my son Ishmael, for I have a desire to see him, for I have not seen him for a long time. Let's not forget that Ishmael was Abraham's favorite son before Isaac was born, more specifically because it was his first son. And Abraham rode upon one of his camels to the wilderness to seek his son Ishmael, for he had heard that he was dwelling in a tent in the wilderness with all belonging to him. 24. And Abraham went to the wilderness, and he reached the tent of Ishmael about noon. And he asked after Ishmael, and found the wife of Ishmael sitting in the tent with her children, and Ishmael her husband and his mother. And Ishmael her husband and his mother were not with them. And Abraham asked the wife of Ishmael, saying, Where has Ishmael gone? She said, He has gone to the field to hunt. And Abraham still mounted upon his camel, for he would not get off to the ground, as he had sworn to his wife Sarah that he would not get off the camel. And Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, My daughter, give me a little water to drink, for I am fatigued from the journey. Now get this. Remember what we read out of Sirach. First of all, Sirach 26:25 about a shameless woman will be counted as a dog. And then from Sirach 25:26 where it says, if she will not accept your headship, get rid of her. Let's find out if this was law that Abraham kept that wasn't specifically stored in the law of Moses. And Ishmael's wife answered and said to Abraham, We have neither water nor bread. And she continued sitting in the tent and did not notice Abraham, neither did she ask him who he was. But she was beating her children in the tent, and she was cursing them. And she also cursed her husband Ishmael and reproached him. And Abraham heard the words of Ishmael's wife to her children, and he was very angry and displeased. And Abraham called to the woman to come out to him from the tent. And the woman came and stood opposite to Abraham, for Abraham was still mounted upon the camel. And Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, When thy husband Ishmael returneth home, say these words to him. A very old man from the land of the Philistines came hither to seek thee, and thus was his appearance and figure. I did not ask him who he was, and seeing that thou was not here, he spoke unto me and said, When Ishmael thy husband return, tell him thus did this man say, When thou comest home, put away, listen to this part, when thou comest home, put away this nail from the tent which thou hast placed here, and place another nail in its stead. All right? Now, this is naturally ancient times terminology and language. I wanted to say something else, not lingo, but language. It's ancient time terminology and language. So he's speaking about something specific. First of all, for the most part, you don't necessarily have nails for a tent except for the nails that hold the support strings down. All right? So you know that Abraham is not telling him to pull up a nail that's holding down the support string from his tent, because there was nothing wrong with the tent itself. He's speaking clearly about his wife who was in the tent. That's the nail in the tent. When thou comest home, put away this nail out of the tent which thou hast placed here, and place another nail in its stead. And Abraham finished his instruction to the woman, and he turned and went off on the camel homeward. And after that, Ishmael came from the chase, he and his mother, and returned to the tent. And his wife spoke these words to him. A very old man from the land of Philistines came to seek thee, and thus was his appearance and figure. I did not ask him who he was, and seeing that thou was not home, he said to me, When thy husband come home, tell him, Thus saith the old man, Put away the nail of the tent which thou hast placed here, and place another nail in its stead. And Ishmael heard the words of his wife, and knew that it was his father, and that his wife did not honor him. And Ishmael understood his father's words that he had spoken to his wife, and Ishmael hearkened to the voice of his father, and Ishmael cast off that woman, and she went away. If she go not as thou wouldest have her, like honoring your mother and your father, just as you have to according to the law, cut her off from thy flesh, and give her a bill of divorce, and let her go. Isn't that what Ishmael did? Didn't he just let her go? Oh, and to remind you guys, what chapter of Yashar that was, that's chapter 21, starting at verse 21. But again, here at verse 36, it says, and Ishmael understood his father's words that he had spoken to his wife, and Ishmael hearkened, he listened to the voice of his father, and Ishmael cast off that woman, and she went away. She didn't commit adultery. What did Issachar say? What did Sicarii say? Or what did they, serpentine-like, snakish-like, have me submit and agree to?
So, is Sirach echoing the Torah, or is the Torah being given by Moses through the mouth of God?
So is Sirach echoing the Torah? Or is simply the Torah the only portion of the law, the first 5 books, the only portion of the law that we understand is law for the Israelites? Is that how Abraham understood it? Because naturally Abraham was before Moses. So Abraham told Ishmael to cut his wife off, get rid of the nail, and replace it. And Ishmael listened. He got rid of his wife, gave her a bill of divorce, sent her off. What again does Deuteronomy say in reference to that? In reference to a divorced woman? A divorced woman. Here at Leviticus 22:13 it says, but if a priest's daughter be a widow or a divorced woman and have no children, and is returned to her father's house, and as in her youth, she shall eat of her father's meat. But there shall no stranger there eat of, or eat thereof. Okay, so she's been divorced. But Sicarii wants to force the understanding that the only reason why you can divorce a woman is for adultery. Well, let's again look at that law, just to validate. Well, according to the law of adultery, the adulterer and the adulteress must be stoned to death. The adulterer and the adulteress must be stoned to death. So please tell me, how is an adulterous woman simply being divorced when she's being pelted to death by rocks? How is she going to be a divorced woman to return back to her father's house if she's being pelted to death by rocks? How can she keep her vows as a divorced woman who committed adultery if she's dead by being pelted to death by rocks? How? I'll tell you how. Here's the confusion. Because your so-called Messiah is a damn devil, first of all. Second of all, he's a Roman national. Parents, Mary, Mother of Jesus. Cause of death, crucifixion. National affiliation, Roman Empire. Your boy is a Roman. He's a Roman national. He's not a damn Israelite. But these damn Israelites, these Satanic Sicarii Snake Israelites, and many other foolish, uneducated, according to the laws of the Israelites, uneducated Israelites will all say that he himself is an Israelite, because Paul kept reminding them that he was an Israelite of the tribe of Benjamin. But Paul was also half Roman. He admits one of his parents were Roman. Now, I have not been able to figure out, which is aside from this lesson, if his mother or father was Roman. That's for, again, like I said, another lesson. But look, Your boy is a Roman national. He's a Roman. So he's going to keep telling you lies. Your enemies shall be found liars unto you. So your boy, John Carter, JC, your shower shy, your shoes are shot, he lied. Because he clearly says, whoever shall put away his wife except for the reason of fornication causes her to commit adultery. Is that what the law stated? Didn't the law say that she's able to marry another man once she's been divorced? But the Messiah says whoever shall marry her causes her to commit adultery or has committed adultery with her. Is that according to the law of Moses? Let's see what Hasad said again.